variation of ScienceExpo presentations the last couple of years, but I'm excited that you get to be here and just share firsthand with your children what they've been learning these last 4 weeks. So what they have been doing is they have been building a battery. We are just finished this whole semester. We've been working on chemistry and electricity. And a battery is taking chemical energy and making electrical energy from it. So it's this perfect opportunity for them to apply all that they've learned and use some engineering skills in the process, because they are designing the battery, they are testing it, but then they're also improving it. So their charge before you was to build a battery that would meet the design battle. And they get to choose what they think makes the best battery. So on your chair, and if some people may have taken them from the last group that you'll see around, there are different categories that they are choosing from, and you'll notice it as to what they think is the best battery. It could be portability, it could be longevity, it could be how much voltage or current it produces. And so their job is to prove to you why they built this super battery. Once the first group gets going, I'll pass some of these out if you don't have one. But at the end of our time, if you would like, there's a QR code, and there's some around the room as well. You can use the camera on your phone, and you can vote. Make sure you click on A block so you'll see your child's name. But you can vote for lots of different categories, which 2 groups you think made the best super battery, as we would call it some. Now, as they are presenting, I have told them you might ask questions at the end. So they are prepared for your questions. They're nervously prepared for your questions, but they're prepared for your questions. But I did tell them that they don't have to explain to you each time what a battery is, so you don't have to hear it 6 different times. They did explain it to me when they presented in class. But you will hear terms such as anode and cathode and electrolyte. Those are the parts of the battery that produce and move the electrons through. You will hear wet cell and different electrochemical cells. They are producing a wet cell battery, which just means their electrolyte is a liquid form of some sort. The cathode and the anode are the positive and the negative parts of the battery, and they're creating a chemical reaction with the anode and cathode that they choose, and when they combine it with the electrolyte. So their job was to research this well to try to see how to produce the best battery. You'll hear words such as voltage, which is how much potential that battery has to move electrons through, and then you'll hear current, or amps, how fast the electrons are going. So I'll leave the rest to them. Don't worry, they're not asking you questions, you're asking them questions. So if you didn't get any of that, that's fine. But I wanted to give you a heads up. All right, so I do want to say, especially if there's some younger kids here, I do have some batteries at the back. The very first battery they built, just to prove to them they could produce voltage from everyday items, was a voltaic pile. And so they were using copper and zinc and lemon juice as their electrolyte to produce a voltage. A typical D-cell battery has 1.5 volts. So as you see their numbers, that's kind of what you're comparing it to. But I have the materials at the back if you want to try to see if you can produce your voltage, just to see maybe how hard it is to produce some voltage and how hard they all worked. All right, so the first group is ready to go, so come on up.
Hi, I'm Elijah.
I'm Branson.
And I'm Judah.
And this is our super battery, the solution of the sea.
Normal batteries, which are usually made of lithium, are not an abundant resource and are not very eco-friendly. We tried to create a battery that solves this problem while also having the same or better current, longevity, and voltage than a regular lithium battery. Our solution was a saltwater battery. The reason we chose a saltwater battery was because it's used by great scientists such as Volta, who use salt water in his electrolyte in his voltaic pile. It's also eco-friendly because you don't need to rip up the earth mining for resources, and it's a very abundant resource, as you can see in the ocean.
Some of the reasons we chose a saltwater battery is because saltwater batteries can store energy for a very long time. It's non-flammable, so it won't explode in your face, and you can freely recycle it with no worries of hurting our planet.
This is the basics of how our battery works. Our electrolyte is salt water. This works because when the salt dissolves into the water, the salt ions float freely in the solution and can be used in the reactions and can even flow through the circuit by itself. Our anode was a galvanized nail, which just means it's coated in zinc. This is where oxidation occurs and where the current leaves because it's negatively charged. Our cathode was copper strips. This is where the current flows into because it's positively charged.
So for our hypothesis, it says if we increase the ratio of salt to water, then the longevity, voltage, and current will increase because there are more salt ions available in the water.
This is our procedure. Step 1 was to add the salt and water to a total of 200 grams. So for example, for a control, which was 3.5% salt, we added 7 grams of salt and 193 grams of water. The next step was to mix the solution well, usually for around 2 minutes for consistency, but sometimes we had to mix it for a little bit longer so the salt would fully dissolve. Step 3 was to place the anode and cathode in the salt water, usually attaching them with tape or hot glue. Step 4 was to attach the anodes and cathodes to the, attach alligator clips to the anodes and cathodes, and then our battery was ready.
So for our results for current, we saw that the more salt that we added, the more the current increased, but only to a certain point, as once we got past the 30% ratio of salt to water, it was really hard to dissolve the salt and it was hard to get a clear reading. But we also saw for our 23% ratio that we were able to consistently hold 18 milliamps for a long period of time.
However, we did encounter a problem. When we increased our salt, our voltage did not increase like we expected. It puzzled us for a few days. What happened was our average volts per cell was around 0.7 volts. However, even when we moved up the salt to water ratio from 3.5% to 21 to even 70% salt, our voltage was still the same and we were confused, but then we came into a solution.
And that solution, more cells. So we used an ice cube tray to create a multi-cell battery. The first step was to mix the 23% salt mixture because this is where we're able to hold a high current of 18 milliamps. The step 2 was to pour 20 milliliters of that solution into each cell of the battery for consistency. And then step 3 was to add the anodes and cathodes, attaching them with hot glue. And then step 4 was to connect the cells together with alligator clips. And then our battery was ready. With this multi-cell battery, we realized that more cells equals more voltage. On average, for every cell that we added, it increased our voltage by around 0.7 volts for a total of 7 volts with 10 cells. But according to our data, we could have gone higher if we had more time.
So for our results for longevity, so we saw first that a standard battery, AA battery, lasts for 6 hours in a constant circuit, and our control cell, which is the one on screen, lasted at least 16 days, which is 384 hours. And when I say at least, I mean that the battery was still running, we just didn't have enough time to keep testing it. And for our 6% salt cell, it lasted at least 3 days, which is 72 hours. Our 30% salt cell lasted at least 21 hours, and any other cells that we tested lasted for at least an hour.
So why is our battery the super battery? Well, firstly, it is eco-friendly because it's recyclable, non-flammable. You don't have to rip up the earth to obtain resources necessary for it. It's also resource-friendly because both salt water and salt water are abundant resources as seen in the ocean.
Our battery is also very energy efficient storage-wise, which means it has a very long shelf life. It can also maintain high currents, like I said earlier, being able to hold 18 milliamps for a long period of time.
We had some solid voltage. When each cell gave us 0.7 volts, and we got 7 volts with 10 cells. Additionally, we outperformed anything we could have imagined with longevity. We got at least 384 hours with 90% of our maximum power still running, and smashing a normal battery out of the park, which normally only lasts 6 hours.
So that is why our battery is the super battery. Any questions? You sir?
How did you test the duration if these things last this long?
So we because it lasted so long, we were able to just leave it in the back room overnight, and we checked it every morning to make sure it was still running. And so our control, it lasted for 16 days before we had to take it off because that was when testing was done, but it was still running.
Did you have a light?
Yeah. We had a wire attached to the alligator clip, so it was still maintaining the circuit. Caleb?
What exactly do you mean by 23% salt mixture? Does that mean like you have added 23% of volume of liquid, or?
Yeah, 23% of the solution was salt, so that would be 46 grams of salt.
How did you land on that number?
Well, we just did some testing, and we saw that at around 30% after that, the current kept dropping. So we just chose a number of 23%, and that's where we were able to get our highest current.
Right there.
If the battery was working one day and then the next day it wasn't working, how would you know how long it lasted overnight?
Well, none of our batteries went out overnight. All of our batteries, they were still running when we had to take them off. So it never stops, is what I'm saying.
All right, well, Ms. Cannon?
So I was just going to ask, like, do you see applications maybe of this kind of technology to like autonomous vehicles? I know you like Teslas. Have you thought about how this could be used in a Tesla? Or could maybe one day it be used that way?
Yeah, I think it would be practical in more like large scale applications down the road when it's able to be like when we're able to like, if we were able to mass produce it and like compact it into smaller, because it lasts for so long and still like high strong voltage. So yeah, I think it's very possible.
And there is also a company building saltwater batteries because they found that it's very good, but those are still in development right now.
All right, if you sell it to Tesla, then we want some. All right.
Give some back to Trinity.
All right,
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Great job. All right, next round. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, guys.
Situation that you need fixing tonight. Anybody need somebody to fix a problem tonight? You might turn to the doctor and he can't fix it. You turn to a lawyer and you know what? He can't fix it. But you know what? My God is a fixer and he can fix anything. If you...